Karen strutted out of her front door, glaring at the small package sitting on her neighbor's doorstep. She glanced around quickly, then snatched it up, tucking it under her arm as she hurried back inside. A triumphant grin spread across her face. Another package intercepted. She plopped down on her couch, tearing open the box. Her smile quickly faded as she pulled out a children's book, frowning at the plain brown packaging. "What a waste of my time," she muttered, tossing the book aside. Just then, the doorbell rang. Karen froze, heart pounding. Had her neighbor already noticed the missing package? She peeked through the window, sighing with relief when she saw the familiar Amazon delivery uniform. She opened the door, plastering on a friendly smile. "Hi there. How can I help you?" The delivery guy looked at her sternly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I need to ask you about a package that was just stolen from your neighbor's doorstep." Karen's face went pale. "Stolen? I haven't seen anything," she lied, hoping her voice didn't betray her. The man pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. "Well, I have footage of you taking it just a few minutes ago." He turned the phone around, and there was the clear video of Karen snatching the package and hurrying back inside. Karen's mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to slam the door, but the delivery guy stuck his foot in the way. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to return the package and come with me. This is considered theft." Karen's heart raced as she realized there was no way out of this. Trembling, she retrieved the box and handed it back to the man. "Please, I didn't mean to." "Save it," he interrupted, already calling the police. "The authorities will sort this out." Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Karen watched in horror as the police officers approached her door. This was not how she'd expected her to. The police officers wasted no time, placing Karen in handcuffs and escorting her to the squad car. She could barely process what was happening as they read her Miranda rights and questioned her about the stolen package. "I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me," Karen stammered, struggling to come up with a believable excuse. "I've just been so stressed lately, and I don't know what I was thinking." The officers exchanged a look of exasperation. "Ma'am, theft is a serious crime, regardless of your personal circumstances," one of them said sternly. "You'll need to come down to the station and explain yourself to the judge." As the car pulled away, Karen caught a glimpse of her neighbor standing on the porch, mouth agape. She cringed, realizing the humiliation she must be feeling. Karen had always been jealous of her neighbor's nice things and pleasant demeanor, but she never imagined things would escalate to this point. At the police station, Karen was booked and fingerprinted. The entire process felt surreal, like she was trapped in a nightmare. She couldn't believe she was actually being arrested. She was a respectable member of the community, not some common criminal. When it was time for her bail hearing, Karen's stomach twisted with dread. She stood before the judge, trying to maintain composure as she explained the situation. "Your Honor, I deeply regret my actions. I've been under a lot of stress lately, and I made a terrible mistake. It won't happen again, I promise." She clasped her hands, hoping the judge would take pity on her. The judge eyed her sternly. "Ms. Johnson, theft is a serious offense, regardless of your personal circumstances. I'll be setting bail at $5,000, and you're to have no further contact with your neighbor or the delivery driver." Karen's heart sank as the bailiff escorted her back to the holding cell. She couldn't believe this was happening. How was she going to come up with $5,000? And what would her husband say when he found out? As the reality of the situation set in, Karen felt a deep sense of shame and regret wash over her. She'd always been so entitled, but now she was facing very real consequences for her actions. Maybe this was the wake-up call she needed to sue. The next morning, Karen's husband, David, arrived at the police station, his face etched with worry and confusion. When the officers had called to inform him of Karen's arrest, he'd been utterly blindsided. "I can't believe this is happening," David said, shaking his head as he signed the paperwork to post Karen's bail. My wife, a criminal. There must be some mistake. The officer behind the desk gave him a sympathetic look. I'm afraid there's no mistake, sir. We have clear video evidence of your wife taking her neighbor's package. It's a serious offense. David let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through his graying hair. I just don't understand. Karen's always been such a well-to-do person. What on earth could have possessed her to do something like this? The officer shrugged. That's for the courts to determine. For now, she's been released on bail, but she'll need to appear before the judge again soon. As Karen emerged from the holding cell, she avoided her husband's gaze, ashamed to face him. David wasted no time ushering her out of the station and into their car, the tension thick between them. All right, Karen, you better start explaining yourself, David said, his voice laced with disappointment. This is completely out of character for you. What the hell were you thinking? Karen wrung her hands, struggling to find the right words. I don't know, David. I've just been so stressed lately, with work and the kids and everything. I guess I wasn't thinking straight. She paused, swallowing hard. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. David shook his head, his brow furrowed. Sorry doesn't cut it, Karen. You're facing criminal charges now. Do you have any idea how this is going to affect our family? He let out a heavy sigh. We're going to have to figure out how to pay that bail, and then you'll have to deal with the legal consequences. I'm so disappointed in you. Karen felt her eyes well up with tears, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. She'd let her entitled attitude and jealousy get the better of her, and now her actions were threatening to tear her family apart. As they drove home in silence, Karen vowed to make things right. The next few days were a blur for Karen, as she navigated the legal system and dealt with the fallout from her arrest. She had to appear before the judge again, where she pleaded guilty to the theft charges and was ordered to pay restitution to her neighbor, as well as complete 100 hours of community service. As if the legal consequences weren't enough, Karen also had to face the wrath of her neighbors. Word of her crime had spread quickly through the tight-knit community, and she was met with looks of disdain and whispers whenever she stepped outside. One particularly tense encounter happened when she ran into her neighbor, Sarah, at the local grocery store. I can't believe you would stoop so low, Karen, Sarah said, her voice dripping with disgust. After all these years of being friendly neighbors, you decide to steal from me. What kind of person does that? Karen felt her face flush with shame. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I was just. Save it, Sarah interrupted, holding up a hand. I don't want to hear your excuses. You violated my trust, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. With that, Sarah turned and stormed off, leaving Karen feeling utterly dejected. She had always prided herself on being the perfect neighbor, but now she was the pariah of the community. Back at home, Karen sat on the couch, her head in her hands. David had been distant and cold since her arrest, and she couldn't blame him. She'd let him down, and she knew it would take a long time to regain his trust. I'm such an idiot, she muttered to herself, tears streaming down her cheeks. How could I have been so selfish and short-sighted? Just then, the doorbell rang. Karen's heart raced, wondering if it was another angry neighbor or, worse, the police. She opened the door to find her young son, Tommy, standing there with a concerned look on his face. Mom, what's going on? He asked, his voice small. The kids at school have been saying you got arrested. Is that true? Karen felt a fresh wave of shame wash over her. She couldn't hide the truth from her own child. Yes, honey, it's true, she said, her voice cracking. I made a mistake, and now I have to face the consequences. Tommy's brow furrowed, and Karen could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes. But why, Mom? Why would you do something like that? Karen had no good answer. She simply pulled her son into a tight hug, silently vowing to make things right, for his sake, and for the sake. Over the next few weeks, Karen's life became a whirlwind of community service, court appearances, and tense family dynamics. She dutifully completed her court-ordered 100 hours of service, working at the local food bank and animal shelter, all the while trying to rebuild the trust she had lost. The hardest part, however, was facing her own family. David remained distant and skeptical, often leaving the room when Karen tried to discuss their situation. And Tommy, her sweet, innocent son, looked at her with a mixture of confusion and disappointment. "I don't understand, Mom," Tommy said one evening as they sat together on the porch. "Why did you do it? Didn't you know it was wrong?" Karen felt a lump form in her throat. "I know, Tommy. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I let my selfishness and jealousy get the better of me." Tommy frowned, his brow furrowed. "But you're not a bad person, Mom. You're always helping others and being nice to people. How could you do something like that?" Karen sighed, wrapping an arm around her son. "I wish I had a better answer for you, honey. All I can say is that I let my ego and my desire for material things cloud my judgment. But I promise you, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make things right." Tommy nodded slowly, his eyes still filled with uncertainty. "Okay, Mom. I trust you. I just hope you can fix things with Dad and the neighbors, too." Karen felt a twinge of guilt at the mention of her husband and neighbors. She knew repairing those relationships would be an uphill battle, but she was determined to try. In the following weeks, Karen took the first step by baking a batch of cookies and delivering them to Sarah, her neighbor. Sarah accepted them with a wary expression, but Karen could see the glimmer of forgiveness in her eyes. "I know I can never undo what I've done," Karen said, her voice trembling, "but I hope you can find it in your heart to give me another chance." Sarah studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Karen. I appreciate you taking responsibility for your actions. We'll see how it goes from here." It was a small victory, but Karen felt a weight lift from her shoulders. With renewed determination, she turned her attention to mending the rift away. Gathering her courage, Karen approached David one evening after Tommy had gone to bed. The tension in the air was palpable, and she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "David, do you have a minute?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her husband looked up from the TV, his expression unreadable. "What is it, Karen?" Karen took a deep breath, wringing her hands nervously. I wanted to talk to you about what happened. I know I've let you down, and I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Karen, I'm honestly not sure what to say. I never in a million years thought you'd do something like this. It's just so out of character for you." I know, Karen said, her voice cracking. "I don't know what came over me. All I can say is that I was being selfish and short-sighted, and I let my ego and jealousy get the better of me." She paused, steeling herself for his reaction. "But I'm determined to make things right. I've been working hard on my community service, and I've even made amends with Sarah. I want to rebuild the trust I've lost, both with you and with the community." David studied her for a moment, his brow furrowed. "And how exactly do you plan to do that, Karen? This isn't the kind of thing that just goes away with a few good deeds." "I know that," Karen said, her voice firm. "That's why I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to go to counseling to really get to the root of why I acted the way I did. And I want us to go to counseling together so we can work on rebuilding our relationship." David's eyes widened, and for a moment, Karen could see a glimmer of hope in his expression. You're serious about this, aren't you?" Karen nodded, reaching out to take his hand. "More than anything, David, I love you, and I love our family. I can't bear the thought of losing that. Please, let me try to make this right." David was silent for a long moment, then slowly squeezed her hand. "All right, Karen. I'll give you a chance. but I need to see real, lasting change. No more selfish behavior, no more excuses. Understood. Karen felt a wave of relief wash over her, and she nodded emphatically. Absolutely. I promise I'm going to do whatever it takes to regain your trust and be the person you deserve. With that, she pulled her husband into a tight embrace, silently vowing to never let her ego and jealousy get the better. Over the next several months, Karen threw herself wholeheartedly into the process of rebuilding her relationships and making amends for her actions. She attended regular counseling sessions, delving deep into the root causes of her entitled behavior and selfishness. Through the therapy, Karen came to realize that her desire for material possessions and petty jealousy of her neighbors stemmed from a deep-seated insecurity about her own self-worth. She had always felt the need to outdo those around her, to prove her superiority, and that toxic mindset had ultimately led her down a dangerous path. As she worked to unpack these issues, Karen also made a concerted effort to be more present and attentive in her marriage and with her son. She scheduled regular date nights with David and made a point of having open and honest conversations about their relationship and how they could move forward. With Tommy, Karen made a conscious effort to listen more and lecture less. She wanted to rebuild the trust and understanding they had once shared, and she knew that would require patience and genuine effort on her part. Slowly but surely, Karen began to see the fruits of her labor. David's icy demeanor thawed, and he started to engage with her more, even joining her in the occasional counseling session. And Tommy, bless his heart, was quick to forgive, readily accepting his mother's apologies and efforts to be a better parent. The real test, however, came when Karen approached her neighbor Sarah again. This time, she came bearing not just an apology, but a tangible offer of restitution. Sarah, I know I can never fully make up for what I did, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right, Karen said, handing her neighbor an envelope. In that envelope is a check for the full value of the package I stole, plus an additional $500 to cover any inconvenience I caused you. Sarah's eyes widened as she accepted the envelope, her expression a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Karen, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Karen replied, her voice steady. I just want you to know that I'm deeply sorry for my actions, and I'm committed to being a better neighbor and community member moving forward. To Karen's relief, Sarah nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Well, I certainly appreciate your gesture, Karen. It's a big step, and I respect that you're trying to make amends. As Karen watched Sarah retreat back into her house, she felt a sense of cautious optimism. She knew that rebuilding trust would take time, but she was determined to prove that she had. The final chapter of Karen's journey towards redemption came several months later, when she received an unexpected knock at her door. Heart-pounding, she opened it to find the familiar Amazon delivery uniform. It was the same driver who had caught her in the act of stealing her neighbor's package, the one who had called the police on her. Ma'am, I wanted to come by and talk to you, the driver said, his expression a mix of hesitation and sincerity. Karen's brow furrowed, but she gestured for him to come in. Of course, please come in. What can I do for you? The driver stepped inside, wringing his hands nervously. Well, I wanted to say that I'm proud of you. I've seen the changes you've made in your community, the way you've tried to make amends. It's not easy, but you're doing it. Karen felt a lump form in her throat, taken aback by his words. I don't know what to say. I'm the one who should be apologizing to you. The driver shook his head. No, don't apologize. What you did was wrong, sure, but you're making it right. That's what matters most. He paused, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small package. I actually have something for you. It's the book that was in the package you took that day. I thought you might want it. Karen's eyes widened as she accepted the package, her fingers trembling. I don't know what to say. Thank you, truly. The driver nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Take care, ma'am, and keep up the good work." With that, he turned and headed back out the door, leaving Karen feeling a mix of emotions: shame, gratitude, and a renewed sense of purpose. As she closed the door and looked down at the package in her hands, Karen couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She had come so far, overcoming her own selfish impulses and working tirelessly to rebuild the trust she had broken. It hadn't been easy, but she knew she was a better person for it. With a determined smile, Karen sat down and opened the package, revealing the children's book inside. She ran her fingers over the cover, a sense of renewed purpose filling her. She would continue to be a force for good in her community, to set an example for her son and her neighbors. No more would she let her ego or jealousy control her actions. From this day forward, Karen was committed to being the kind of person her family and community could